Well, thank you, Jim. We were just talking before we got you on the horn that the Nets should not let up. They should not take their foot off the accelerator because of their age on their team. They want to have quick series. I think this is an important game tonight. I think it's a must-win for the Raptors, but boy, it would be nice if the Nets could get this one.
I agree with you. I think a couple of things pop into my mind, and I caught the last part of what you and Don were talking about. I think you have to focus in on a couple of things. Teams that pull back the throttle a little bit, they're not doing it intentionally in the playoffs. It's just like one of these psychological things that you can't put your finger on, and nobody will ever say, well, we won the first one, so we're going to let the second one go by us. Guys are out there playing very, very hard, and I think tonight what you'll see is the Nets want to get greedy, and they've used that word to come to Toronto and make sure they get that second game. Now, the other part of what you guys were speaking about, I think the series and the length of the series and the time in between games, when you figure that, the first game Saturday was 12:30, so let's say for all intents and purposes it's over at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I know it's a little early in that. Think of all the time that you have between that time and game number 2, Tuesday night, in Toronto. The point being right there is for a team that, quote-unquote, has a couple of guys like Garnett and Pierce who are putting the quotes around that again, old guys, that helps them immeasurably. Because if you think back to when Michael Jordan was playing in the playoffs, one thing I used to always notice about Jordan was when there was an extra day off of rest, Jordan used to come out and dominate games if he had 2 full days off. Not to say that every game throughout this series, but if you think about it, right, this series started on April 19th. If it goes all 7, will end May 4th. So I would anticipate in this particular series, at least, that the age or tired legs should not be a problem for the Nets. And keep in mind, you have the Raptors, who really shouldn't have that problem anyway because they're a relatively young team.
All right, one of the problems in Game 1, Jim, shooting from the perimeter, was that just good defense by Toronto, or did they just have an off day shooting threes?
I think it's a little combination of everything. I didn't do the first game, but I watched it, from home, and I watched the tape of it. The crowd was right there. I mean, that was a fabulous crowd, and the guys who were in the building when I was talking to them, Ian Eagle, Frank DeGrace, the producer for the Nets, they said it was just spectacular in terms of the loudness and the intensity in that building. So I think it's a little bit of everything. The first-time jitters for some of those guys. What I would anticipate some of these guys on the bench to do, I think, and Alan Anderson played pretty well, but you have Teletovic and you have Blatch. And Thornton, guys, with the outside shooting, I think they just have to worry about taking their shot in the sequence of the offense. I would like to see Thornton, for example, put the ball on the floor, use his body to get to the basket, which kind of opens up the floor a little bit more, but show the Raptors that, hey, we're not just willing to sit back, shoot the basketball, and hurry our shots. Now, if they probe a little bit, look to the post, and they kick the basketball out, you have to take those shots in rhythm because the Nets averaged about 24 shots this year from the three-point stripe. So the 24 wasn't the problem. It was only making 4 of them.
The Raptors actually admitted that the game got really fast. And you always hear about great players like Jordan and Gretzky and Jeter, that in big moments everything slows down. Well, if the game got really fast in the first game, now in a game that they have to have, I mean, is it going to get even faster? Is there any chance it slows down now?
That's an interesting concept, Michael, because, from a Raptors perspective, I think what they need to do is get into their offense a little quicker and force the Nets to play defense a little longer in the half-court sets and not dominate the half-court sets. But 2 quick things that I think are going to be real important tonight. DeMar DeRozan, who averaged 20-plus points a game, was 3 for 13 in the papers, and you read the stories about him. He sat in his room after the game pressing a little bit. He even, a lot of times during the season, he goes to the gym late at night to work on his shot. He didn't do that after that game, but he kind of sat alone and thought that through. To me, that's all fine. That's a way of refreshing your mind and wiping out of your head, but it also tells me a young player is pressing a little bit. Terrence Ross for their team goes 1 for 4 in 16 minutes, picks up a bunch of fouls early, 4 fouls overall, doesn't get into the flow of his game. He averages about 10. So now they have 2 guys who are kind of struggling mentally after game number 1. It's going to be very interesting to see if they can get untracked. And I think from a Raptors perspective, they have to get untracked early and use this crowd to their advantage.
Does Karolinko get in the game too?
I'm thinking he does, Don, because, I think, Jason Kidd basically goes with instincts on occasion, and he just felt that this was the time, to have Karolinko not sit him, not do not play him for any particular reason. It's just that situations didn't dictate that. I think one of the reasons that Karolinko will play tonight is the standpoint of if Jason Kidd is thinking, and I didn't speak to Jason about this, but if I'm in his mind thinking, all right, my guys on the bench who I have a lot of confidence in struggled a little bit, might not be a bad idea for game number 2 to put somebody into the game that rattles the game a little bit. And what I mean by that is Karolinko may very well not score many points. He may get a couple of rebounds. He'll block a shot. He'll deflect a pass. He'll help you defensively. So a lot of what Karolinko does from a basketball perspective and a fundamental perspective goes under that radar, if you will. But having a Karolinko in there, if a game is close, if it's a 5-point game or what have you at the end of this game, I think having Karolinko in there for his 15, 18 minutes throughout the course of the game may very well pay dividends for them.
And also, he doesn't need to have Mrs. Kirilenko destroy him on Twitter, so of course he's going to get him in today.
I leave that up to guys like you to comment on that.
Final thing we had on Tim Legler yesterday. I don't know if you heard this before we had you on, but Legler said that he could actually see the Nets play for the championship. He could see them in the finals. Do you think this team is that good, and could their old legs hold up that long?
I don't think the legs are going to be a problem. I think this team, when you look at it from a perspective of what Billy King did and Jason Kidd has done, this team is kind of built for the playoffs, if you will. And I think more importantly, when you see the possessions, 3 out of the 4 games during the regular season, both of these teams scored right around 100 points. One game, the Raptors won 96-80. So let's throw that one out just for a second. But they're scoring a whole lot of points. And now all of a sudden the first game comes down to a 94-87 victory for the Nets. They shoot 43%. The Raptors shoot 39% for the game. I think the fact that it's not an up-and-down transition game like you may see in the West is going to help the Nets. And I really believe, and I honestly believe, that Jason Kidd has done a terrific job all season long jockeying minutes and making sure that guys aren't worn out.